My name is Ava, and this is the story of my complicated relationship with my mother-in-law, Sophia, who seemed determined to disrupt my life. With her somewhat old-fashioned beliefs, Sophia had never liked me. For many years, my husband William and I lived far away from her influence, in a small town on the outskirts of the country, where no one knew our business. There, we had everything we needed for a peaceful life: green fields, a cozy little house, and a park nearby where William could take walks with our daughter while I sat under the shade of an old oak tree, reading. We were happy, or so I thought, until his work brought us back to the city where Sophia lived. When William accepted a new position at a prestigious company, I knew our lives would change. We were once again within her sphere of influence, in a city I found alien and unwelcoming. Sophia seemed to be everywhere. No matter where in the city we went, she appeared like a specter from the past, something between a stern lady of high society and a warrior eager to dispense moral guidance to everyone in her path. She was strict, calculating, and unforgiving of weakness. Despite all of William's efforts, Sophia remained a looming thread in my eyes, a shadow hanging over every step we took. Dealing with Sophia would not have been such an issue for me if not for one particular factor. I had learned to handle toxic, controlling people because of my own struggles with my parents. Benjamin, my father-in-law, was a completely uninvolved man, and that gave me room to breathe. He never interfered in our lives, always supported William and me, offered advice when I asked, and most importantly, he respected my boundaries. This made my life easier, creating the necessary distance without which my relationship with Sophia would have become unbearable. But the real issue was Sophia's access to my daughter, Luna, who was 9 years old at the time. Luna was my world. Precious, incredibly kind, with eyes full of unspoken mysteries, she was always affectionate and loved spending time with family. Nothing mattered more to me than her happiness. But her gentleness, her warmth toward people, made me worry. Luna couldn't be like me. She loved people, believed in goodness, and saw the best in everyone, until the cruelty of the world proved her wrong. She lacked the protective barrier I had carried with me all my life, the mechanism I had developed to survive constant pressure. Before our move, Luna only knew Benjamin and Sophia as her grandparents. We had no contact with my parents. The reasons for this were complicated and painful, involving long broken ties, disappointments, unspoken grievances, and betrayed expectations. My mother was a woman for whom family obligations held only formal value, while my father, despite his kindness, either couldn't or wouldn't face the truths that shattered my trust. These relationships, which I had once tried to mend, became a deep disappointment to me, and I chose to leave them in the past. But Sophia? She was of a different breed. Her capacity and determination to control our lives terrified me. I knew she would use her role as a grandmother to infiltrate Luna's life. For her, it was just another opportunity to assert her dominance. Every time Sophia visited us, I felt my boundaries begin to erode. She could seem pleasant and caring, but her words were always layered with subtext. Sometimes, I felt she was trying to change my daughter, her behavior, her worldview, and worst of all, my perception of myself. Sophia never said these things directly, but every gesture, every glance, conveyed more than words ever could. She was ready to mock my parenting approach, to needle at every minor mistake, and I knew she would continue until she destroyed everything I had built with Luna. I tried to be smart, calm, to not rise to her provocations. I thought I could control the situation, that I could somehow protect my daughter from these manipulations. But one day, after Luna returned from another visit with Sophia, I noticed something had changed. She started talking about how Grandma Sophia believed I was too soft on her, that I needed to be stricter and more disciplined. At that moment, something stirred inside me. A familiar old fear I had tried to bury began to resurface. Luna loved spending time with her grandparents, and it was impossible not to notice. She would eagerly gather her toys, put on the pink hat Sophia had given her for Christmas, and rush to the car. Her morning face, glowing with excitement as she said, "Mom, Dad, I'm going to Grandma's," felt like a little piece of joy piercing my soul. I couldn't simply tell her to stop seeing them, not without explaining why. especially since Luna genuinely enjoyed her time with them. She was happy around them, and I knew it. But Sophia refused to take Luna's allergies seriously. All those remarks about food, about how Luna was too picky or too sensitive, burned me inside. Sophia thought Luna was exaggerating. She didn't understand why the girl couldn't eat certain foods or take the situation seriously. I genuinely feared for Luna's safety every time she stayed with her grandparents without me. It was a risk I couldn't ignore, though Sophia always had some logical explanation for my concerns. Her words were often cold and dismissive, and her look, raising her eyebrows and saying, "Don't make a tragedy out of it," sliced me to the core. I knew I had to resolve this somehow. But how? What could I do when Luna was so attached to them, so genuinely loved spending time with them? These contradictions tore me apart. On one hand, I understood I needed to trust my child and allow her to build relationships with her family. On the other hand, something deep inside screamed that this world Sophia had created for Luna was dangerous. I was tired of worrying and could no longer remain calm. In every step Luna took near them, I saw danger. "Relax, Ava," I told myself. "There's no need to push my parents away over something so trivial." Maybe I really was overreacting. Luna deserves the love of her grandparents, and perhaps she would be happier if I simply let her enjoy this time. After all, she seemed content with them, and I shouldn't interfere with every little detail. But as soon as I entertained this thought, memories of Sophia never taking me seriously and constantly questioning my decisions as a mother would resurface. Every comment she made, every doubt she cast over what I did for Luna, irritated me more and more. "You worry so much about my mom," William said once when I voiced my concerns again. His words, as always, rang true. He was the one who always found a balance between me and my anxieties, between my fears and reality. He loved his mother, and I knew that. But when he said, "I'll talk to her. I'm sure she'll listen," I felt a tight knot form in my chest. Yes, he wanted to believe that Sophia would listen. But I knew how she could react. And, more importantly, I wasn't sure I could handle yet another honest conversation that might once again end in arguments and mutual blame. When William reassured me that he would voice our concerns to Sophia, I wanted to believe him. Luna genuinely loved her grandparents. I saw her smile when Sophia read her stories or when she and Benjamin taught her old family recipes, only for Luna to run around the house like it was a castle, excitedly sharing what she loved about it. Those moments were real, and I couldn't destroy them, even if my fears wouldn't let me rest. But I couldn't bring myself to tell Luna to stop seeing them. Even if she ever expressed reluctance, I knew it wouldn't stem from her own desire but from my fears and doubts. I couldn't do that with a clear conscience, and I understood that perhaps this was the hardest choice of my life. Sophia didn't just ruin Luna's birthday, she turned everyone against her. It was more than I could bear. It all began when Luna opened her gift to find a large cake adorned with bright letters spelling her name. It should have been a joyous moment, a moment of happiness, but Luna's joy lasted only a minute. I still remember how she looked, so delighted, her eyes wide with excitement as she cut into the cake, unaware that everything would change in just a few moments. It was only when she took the first bite that something went wrong. Her face turned pale at first, and then the signs of an allergic reaction began to appear before our eyes. I watched as her throat started to swell, and at that moment, the entire room seemed to freeze. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Luna, my heart, my life, was in danger, and there was nothing I could do. In terror, I looked at William, and I saw panic in his eyes too. He didn't have time to say anything, only grabbing her as we rushed to our daughter's side. I screamed, powerless to change what was happening, watching as her throat swelled more and more, my thoughts spiraling into chaos. I saw William rushing out, his steps slicing through the air with urgency. Meanwhile, someone else, panicked, called for an ambulance, knowing who was to blame. I stood there frozen with fear, but as soon as I saw him desperately trying to save our daughter, I turned and locked eyes with Sophia. My heart pounded wildly in my chest, and my hands began to tremble. I approached her, feeling my anger ignite with every step. "What the hell did you give Luna?" I demanded, trying to control myself, but my voice broke into a shout. Sophia, standing off to the side, showed no sign of concern. She stood there as if nothing had happened, as if this wasn't her responsibility. She merely pursed her lips and replied indifferently, "Oh, nothing, Ava. It was just an ordinary cake." A cake. An ordinary cake. I felt rage consume me, but at the same time, I tried to comprehend how this had happened. Why didn't it work? How could Sophia not know Luna was allergic to nuts? I could no longer contain my fury. "What's in the cake?" I demanded, stepping closer. I couldn't believe that Sophia didn't grasp the severity of the situation. This wasn't just a cake, it was a weapon that had nearly destroyed my child. And the worst part was that she didn't even try to hide her culpability. She stood there as if nothing had happened, wearing that innocent expression that enraged me even more. Sophia shrugged and quietly said again, "I don't understand what happened." "Surely, there must have been something on your end that led to Luna fainting." She spoke calmly, as if the problem wasn't her mistake but my reaction to this accident. "Obviously, you forgot to ensure she had proper attention," she added with that sharp tone I had always despised. I couldn't believe that this woman was standing in front of me, saying such things. In that moment, I felt a wave of fury engulf me. All this time, I had tried to be tolerant, to find compromises, but now there was nothing left for me to do but stand there and watch as Sophia tried to shift the blame onto me. It was the final straw. I couldn't allow her to walk all over my life again, destroying everything I had built for my family. Sophia didn't understand what I was willing to do for my daughter. She thought she could manipulate me and take advantage of my kindness. But I was no longer the person who held back my feelings to please others. This wasn't just an attack on me, it was an attack on my child, and I wasn't going to let it happen. For God's sake, my daughter is allergic to nuts. The cry burst out of me, a scream of despair, as I rushed towards Sophia, barely containing my fury. My heart was pounding in my chest, and the fear for Luna was so overwhelming it felt like the air had been squeezed out of my lungs. I couldn't understand how she could have missed this, how she could fail to grasp something as obvious as a nut allergy. Luna could have died from this reaction, all because Sophia decided she knew better. How could she not ask before giving her that cake? How could she treat my child's life so carelessly? Who gave you the right to unilaterally decide how to deal with her allergy? I shouted, but my words seemed to bounce off Sophia. She remained cold, like a stone. Her face, despite the gravity of the situation, showed indifference, with the faintest lift of an eyebrow at my emotional outburst. Unmoved, Sophia replied with the same infuriating calmness that had always grated on me, "Look at the mess you're making. I'm Luna's grandmother, and I have the right to care for my grandchild. She'll be fine. There's no need for such a fuss. This is just an overreaction on your part, trying to scare me and punish me for nothing. This is all part of Camilla's plan to tarnish my reputation," she added with a tone suggesting that the entire situation was just a scripted drama she was willing to play out. I couldn't believe my ears. What plan? What did Camilla have to do with this? How could she speak so casually about Luna nearly dying in front of us, as if it were some minor misunderstanding? I couldn't and wouldn't contain my fury. "Listen to me, Sophia. If you think you're getting away with this today, you're mistaken. There will be serious consequences. You have no right to risk my daughter's life," I said, feeling my words fill the air with tension like poison. Still defiant, Sophia continued, "Calm down, Ava. I understand everything. Luna is my granddaughter, and I love her. This was just a minor incident. You're overreacting. What's the big deal if she got a little sick?" I felt my restraint crumble like a storm about to unleash its full force. Yet I forced myself to shift tactics. Words weren't enough anymore, actions would have to speak for me. I needed to make her understand that this wasn't a trivial matter, it was my child's life at stake. As soon as I finished voicing my concern, the ambulance finally arrived. The sight of the paramedics, whom I welcomed as saviors, brought a wave of relief. They acted quickly, setting up in four, checking Luna's vitals with focused expressions. All other thoughts faded as I watched them work. I couldn't shake the image of Luna's small face contorted with pain and fear. Throughout it all, Sophia stood nearby, almost motionless, her face still frozen in that impenetrable mask of indifference. The ambulance took us to the hospital, and William and I followed closely behind. I couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if we hadn't noticed the symptoms in time, if the panic hadn't driven us to act. At the hospital, the doctors sprang into action while I stood by Luna's side, holding her hand, unable to believe this was happening to us. They told us Luna would need time to recover, that the reaction had been severe but she would pull through. I tried to process how this could have happened. How many other moments like this had there been, where Sophia acted as if she could decide everything for us, for my family? That was the moment I realized I could no longer turn a blind eye to what was happening. My patience had run out. Sophia would no longer have a place in our family. These words weren't a threat, they were a firm, irrevocable decision. William and I were determined to protect Luna from any further harm and to ensure she could grow up in a safe and supportive environment. It was a difficult path, one that would require sacrifices, but for our daughter's safety and happiness, we were ready to see it through. After a long discussion, William and I decided, while Luna was still in the hospital, that it was time to go home. We couldn't remain in this state of uncertainty. Even though Luna was under the care of the doctors and her life was no longer in immediate danger, we couldn't dismiss what had happened. We needed not only to recover from the terror of the incident but also to put an end to this long-standing conflict. Benjamin, Sophia, and a few guests lingered to hear the latest updates on the situation. It seemed they had decided to simply wait, not delving into the details to avoid disrupting the festive atmosphere. But for us, everything had already changed. This was the moment to address Sophia's transgressions. For hours had passed since the incident, but the fire of my anger hadn't cooled. Everything rested on William. He was resolute. When we returned home, we were back where this nightmare had started. In the living room, Benjamin was chastising Sophia, who sat casually typing on her phone as if the whole ordeal was just an unpleasant incident to be forgotten. Her complete indifference burned through me. I stood frozen in the doorway, unsure how to react to the scene. It was exactly as I had expected, like nothing had happened, as if the panic and fear we had endured mere hours ago had never existed. Nearby, the untouched birthday cake lay on the table, its pristine white surface now a stark reminder of how easily joy could be shattered. The sight of it brought tears to my eyes. My daughter hadn't even been able to enjoy what should have been one of the happiest days of her life. Doubts about myself, about whether we could have done things differently, flooded my mind, but I forced myself to hold back my emotions. I couldn't afford to be weak. Sophia, noticing us, continued to fidget with her phone screen, ignoring everything happening around her. She didn't understand how crucial it was for her to realize her mistake, how dangerous her negligence had been. All I could feel in that moment was disappointment and incomprehension. She failed to grasp that her actions could have led to a tragedy. To her, it was just a trifle, an accident. She had always been like this, self-assured, calm in the face of the gravest situations, as if none of it truly mattered. "Sophia," William said, his voice cold and resolute, "you need to understand what you've done. You put our daughter in danger, and that won't be forgiven. This wasn't just a mistake. You endangered her life. Your actions were no accident." I couldn't believe that, after all this, Sophia could remain so calm. But when her eyes met mine, I saw something I couldn't quite place. It was more than confidence. It was a sense of complete impunity. She was ready to justify herself with whatever words she deemed necessary. "I did everything I thought was right," she finally said, putting her phone down and looking at us with icy calm in her eyes. "And I think you're all blowing this out of proportion." I exhaled sharply, feeling as though I couldn't catch my breath. All I could do was remain silent, silently watching her and coming to terms with the realization that our paths had diverged forever. She would never understand that the most important thing to me was Luna's safety, not her whims or excuses. We could no longer live in a world where her presence was something we had to tolerate. But in that moment, I couldn't and wouldn't discuss it any further. I looked at William, and we exchanged a silent glance. He knew how I felt, he knew what we both wanted, and our intentions had never been clearer. "I'll take you to court for grandparents' rights," Sophia said, her voice brimming with the unyielding determination I knew too well. She always spoke as if the entire world was meant to bow to her will. "I'll take you to court, and the judge will grant me visitation rights. Just wait and see. I won't need anyone in my corner, I'll do it all myself." Her confidence was unnerving, but I couldn't afford to let my grip falter. I responded firmly. "Good luck trying to claim grandparents' rights when you'll already be facing charges," I said, barely believing my own words but knowing it was the only way forward. "Prison. I'm sure a judge would find it amusing that a criminal is demanding visitation rights after endangering her own granddaughter's life." Sophia hadn't expected such a response. She was shocked, as if someone had dropped a bombshell, and a flicker of worry crossed her eyes. But she still tried to maintain her composure. "What do you mean, Ava? Why would I go to prison?" "I didn't do anything wrong, nothing compared to what you've done," she said, her voice slightly trembling, but she continued to stand her ground. "I haven't done anything wrong, Sophia," I said, suppressing the fury that was igniting my heart. "You need to understand that this was a crime, and you still don't seem to grasp what happened. You gave Luna a cake with nuts, knowing she has a severe allergy. You put her life in danger, and that's not just a mistake. It's a crime. You can be arrested for deliberately exposing a child to allergens. That's considered a form of poisoning." Sophia fell silent, her face pale. I could see her trying to find words to defend herself, but something in her head shifted. Perhaps, for the first time, she realized that her actions could have led to a catastrophe. But instead of apologizing or admitting her guilt, she tried once again to justify herself, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I didn't realize her allergy was so serious," she said, but it sounded insincere and rehearsed. "Well, it was just a cake with nuts. Luna always loved sweets, and I thought she wouldn't be so sensitive. Do you honestly think that's an excuse?" I looked at her in despair. "You care so little about a child's health that you didn't even bother to check what she could and couldn't eat? You're so arrogant that you decided you could make that decision for her?" I felt the tension in the room escalate, and though Sophia still tried to maintain a facade of calm, I could see her confidence beginning to crack. She stood there, her head slightly lowered, unsure of what to say. This wasn't just a battle between us. This was a fight for Luna's safety, for her future. "You can do whatever you want," Sophia said, "but I will fight for my granddaughter. I'm her grandmother, and I have a right to her. I won't let you destroy my family." I couldn't bear to listen to her complaints any longer. These empty threats meant nothing to me. In that moment, only one thing mattered: Luna, her life, and her safety. Everything else was secondary. "We've already called the police, Sophia," I said calmly, despite the storm of anger inside me. "They'll be coming with us to the hospital. I'm sure they've already started an investigation. And let the court decide who's right. But one thing I know for sure, after what you've done, you have no place in our lives. Not in our family." Sophia remained silent, unsure how to react. She must have thought she could smooth things over as always, that she would somehow emerge unscathed. But now, with the threat real and her actions called into question, her usual smugness began to waver. "You can't treat me like this, Ava." Her voice was cold now, and her face flushed with anger. "I am Luna's grandmother, and you have no right to take my place in her life." "I'm not taking your place," I replied, feeling the tension between us mount. "I'm protecting my daughter. And believe me, that's far more important than your claims to a role in her life." At that moment, the house seemed to grow quieter. Benjamin, who had been standing in the corner the entire time, looked stunned but clearly sided with William. He remained silent, hesitant to intervene, but his expression spoke volumes. Perhaps he had always known how dangerous Sophia could be, and now he was firmly on our side. I stood firm before her, refusing to let her hide behind her pride. What mattered to me was Luna, and I wouldn't let anyone, even a relative, jeopardize her well-being. Sophia could demand and threaten all she wanted, but it no longer mattered. The issue was no longer about her, it was about love and safety, and I had to ensure both for my daughter. Little Luna stirred awake, and as her eyes fluttered open, her face reflected a noticeable improvement. She glanced cautiously around the room, and when she spotted us, her family, a faint smile lit up her small face. But what happened next made my heart ache. Luna reached out toward me, fear shining in her eyes, a fear I hadn't expected. At first, she struggled to find her words, but then her quiet voice broke through. "Mom. Dad. Please don't let Grandma near me. I'm scared of her." She began to cry, her tears rolling down her cheeks like an unstoppable rain. Luna pleaded with us to keep her away from Sophia. She was afraid. The fear was palpable, impossible to miss. It was in her every word, her every movement. My brave little girl, who had always been so full of life, now seemed like a small, frightened creature, and I couldn't help but feel my soul shatter with pain. "Mom, she made me eat those strange things." I couldn't breathe. Luna clung to me as if I could shield her from the entire world. I didn't know what to say. How could I explain to her that Grandma would no longer pose a threat? How could I convince her that this nightmare chapter of our lives was over? In my mind, I cycled through all the possible words, but in that moment, only one thing mattered: to reassure Luna that her safety and peace were now our highest priorities. William and I knelt beside her, and despite her tears, we promised her that she was safe, that Grandma would never hurt her again. We vowed that Sophia would no longer be part of our lives and that we would do everything to ensure she couldn't disrupt our family again. Luna looked at us with an expression that left no doubt about her sincerity. She was still shaken, but it seemed our words were exactly what she needed to hear. We also emphasized how much she meant to Grandpa Benjamin, who would always be there to support her and provide the love and care she needed during these difficult times. Benjamin's quiet strength was something we all desperately needed in that moment. I noticed how Luna seemed to calm down slightly when his name was mentioned, though her emotions were still raw. Everything was still too fresh, too overwhelming for her. To help Luna process her emotions, we decided to enroll her in sessions with a child therapist. It was a step I felt was absolutely necessary to help her release this heavy burden. It was crucial to give Luna a space where she could express her feelings, learn to cope with what had happened, and perhaps regain trust in the world around her. We didn't want this to become an invisible scar that would haunt her for the rest of her life. At the same time, William and I began couples therapy. This wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. We needed to learn how to work as a team, to speak openly about our feelings and concerns, and to support one another through this challenging ordeal. We couldn't afford to let our connection break down when it was already fragile. Therapy helped us become more attentive and understanding toward each other, and it reinforced how vital it was to stand united during life's hardest moments. Benjamin's support played a crucial role in our collective healing. He was always there, his presence a steady anchor keeping us afloat. His ability to remain calm and composed in the most difficult situations allowed us to find solutions even when everything felt hopeless. He understood what William and I were going through and not only supported us but also helped Luna feel safe when she needed it most. Day by day, we began to see progress. Luna grew calmer, though her relationship with Sophia remained fractured. Nonetheless, we witnessed significant changes in ourselves and our interactions as a family. This journey became an opportunity to strengthen our bonds, not just as parents but as partners learning to support one another and confront what once seemed insurmountable. With each passing day, we grew stronger, more resolute, and more determined to move forward despite the horrors we had endured. Our family, despite all the trials, was beginning to heal.